Well, hello there. I'm going to show you how to make my Celestine beanie hat. And if you saw my cowl video, I've done this to match it. And because I had to make the yarn work for both hats, I added in some of this chocolate brown alpaca mohair blend. And so that's what I did the brim in. I did it in just a really nice soft dark chocolate brown yarn. And this is it here. If I find out what kind of yarn that it actually was later, the brand, I'll let you know, but it's 2 strands of this chocolate brown yarn, and I had rolled it into a ball because it came not as a ball, as one of those long hanks. Okay, so that's that yarn. And the other yarn I'm using here is the Stella Atlantis, and I have just this tiny bit of it left. And this is the Stella Atlantis, a bulky yarn in the colored gleam. And as soon as it's done, I will be going back to this chocolate color and finishing the hat. And I'm going to do a reduced brim with it. So here it is in the Celestine Stitch, and here's what it looks like in the hat. It's looking really, really pretty with lots and lots of texture. Beautiful, beautiful stitch with tons of texture. And the inside looks really good too, so I'm making the hat reversible just like I made the cowl reversible. Owl eye looks good on the other side. And so it's going to look really good, and this is what the stitch will look like. It's a really pretty stitch too. So I will have a nice hat to match that cowl. I'm on a Cindy Wood loom, and I made the hat in a tighter stitch so it would be better as a hat. It's the same yarn, it's just in a 5/8 inch gauge, whereas my cowl was in a 3/4 inch gauge. So it's a 5/8 inch gauge, Cindy Wood loom, and it's got 42 pegs. A 9-inch. It'd be small for most women out there. It's really a youth hat, but I have a very, very small head, and youth hats fit me just fine. As a matter of fact, if I go to buy a hat in a ladies' hat store, they're all too big for me. So this is perfect size for me. You probably want a 36 peg loom or something equivalent in a 5/8 inch gauge. But anyway, you can use your favorite hat loom for this pattern, and any yarn that you like actually, and you can make it all one color, or you can mix the colors the way that you see me doing. It's completely up to you. The loom hook I'm using is from Touche Crochet. I bought it on Etsy, and although it's crochet, she does do a few loom hooks as well, and it's a beautiful unique loom hook. I really, really, really like it, and it's very ergonomic. And okay, so that's all you need to know, and we'll get started. And got to get you caught up to me, so I'm going to take you to an owl eye video for putting on the brim, for the owl eye brim, to get you started. And it will get you started and tell you what to do, and then you can knit right up to the end of the brim, and you can make this brim as wide as you want. I made it just 2 inches. That's usually the kind of brim I want, sometimes 2.5. But you can make this brim any size that you want, whatever you feel like. And when you get to the end of the brim, just stop. We'll come back, and I will be showing you how to do the stitch. Okay? And when I add on the color, you can add it on any way you like. You can just do a slip knot and add it on the next peg where you're going to have that one end, leave the ends hanging, and then weave them in, or you can join them with any joining technique you like. On my channel, I have the joining technique that I use, so you can do it that way, but you can attach a new yarn any way that you like. So anyway, I'll take you to the brim, we'll catch up, and then I'll start showing you how to do the stitch. So we'll see you in a bit. So I'm going to start by doing a chain cast on. It's a crochet chain cast on. I'm going to do it without a crochet hook. So what I do, I just take it, make a loop, just like that, and then put the working yarn through it and have a slip knot, and then I just place that on the first peg. And then I take my loom hook, put it under the loop, and pull the working yarn through to get a loop. And then I tighten it by pulling on the working yarn here in the back and make sure that this stitch is tight. And then I just take that loop, put it behind the next peg, holding on to it, and pull the working yarn through it. And that's all there is to the cast on. Put the loop behind, working yarn through, tighten it up, behind, working yarn through, tighten it up. At any time, if you want this loop to be smaller, you just pull on it. So working yarn behind and tightening it up. I mean the loop behind and tightening it up. And that's all there is to it. And we just do that all the way around the loop. So I'm just going to put you on pause because it'd be boring watching me do it all the way around the loom. And we will catch up when I'm close to the other side. Okay, so here I am almost at the end. So I take the the loop, put it behind the peg, tighten it up, and then here's the one we started at. And so you just take the loop and let it fall over there. And just take the loom hook and knit it over, and now it's all secured and you're ready to go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do now is finish the cast on. So I'm going to do a row of owl eye, and so I just do a U-wrap over peg 1, come over, and then I do a wrap over peg 1 and 2 and just knit it over and knit it over. Whatever peg you're on, peg 1, you go over peg 1 and 2 and knit it over. I have lots of videos of owl eye on my channel, so you can go watch those if you'd like to see more of a demonstration of it. And then just around and knit it over. And peg 1 over peg 1 and 2, knit it over. And we just do owl eye all the way around. Okay, so I will meet you back up at the beginning peg again. Okay, so I've done my row of owl eye all the way around the loom, and now I'm going to do one row of purl, and it'll be the only purl in the whole hat. And I just want to do it here at the beginning of the brim to make sure that the edge stays nice and straight. So how you purl is you put the working yarn into the loop. There we go. And then pull up the working yarn, take the loop off, and let the loop fall to the front. So take the hook, put it in the loop, pull up the working yarn, and you pull up the whole loop and put the new loop on. Under, pick up the working yarn, put it on the peg, and tighten it up. And there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube if you haven't purled before. So we just do one row of purl. So I will meet you up when we get back to the starter peg again. Okay, so I've done my row of purl, and now I'm just going to do owl eye, and our brim is going to be owl eye stitch. So how we start that, there's our peg 1. We always come over and do a U-wrap on peg 1, and now we can go and do a second wrap over peg 1 and one over peg 2. And wherever we are, we're on peg 1, so we wrap 1 and 2, and we just keep going like that. And you can make your brim however long you like it. You could make just a 1-inch brim if you like thin brims. I'm going to do about 1.5 inches. If you like a really long brim, you can do one that's 2 inches long. So I'm just going to keep working in owl eye till I get the brim the length that I want it, and then we can catch up. Okay, so we'll see you in a few. Okay, now that you've done the brim, I'll take you right into doing the Celestine stitch. So we'll say this was the last stitch when you finished your brim. We can say that it's right here, and then your very next stitch will be the Celestine stitch. Okay, so to do the Celestine stitch, you're going to go over the peg in a U-wrap, knit it off. You're going to come back around the other way, knit it off, and you're going to have it look like this when you knit it off, so it's loose enough to get over. If you pull it too tight like this, you're never going to get it over. Okay, so you want it to look kind of like this, so it's easy for you to put over. And then you're going to keep going from the back around in front of the peg around, and you can just lay the yarn over this peg because the next stitch will be this one anyway. And you knit this one off, and then you go do the U-wrap this way, do a U-wrap the opposite way, and then go all the way around the peg and over to this next peg. Knit it off, and then you do the U-wrap on this peg. You do it this way on that, and you come around. And if we weren't going to put it on there, you just come around like this, right, and hold it and knit it off. And then you do the U-wrap here, U-wrap this way, and then wrap around. Okay, so U-wrap this way, U-wrap this way, and then around. Okay, so whichever way, when you did this way, you just keep going and go around. If you were to go around this wrong way, you'd get a different stitch I did, and you wouldn't have this kind of texture. It would be a completely different stitch. I think it's my roses and chains stitch that you do that. So you just make sure you go around that way. Okay, that, like that, and around. Then you go U-wrap the other way, and you go around. Okay, so that's all there is to it, and this is the stitch you get. Just a beautiful, beautiful stitch full of a ton of texture. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to add in the brown yarn when I finish this one, and I'm going to keep going the length that I want before I bind off. You can do the hat whichever way you want. You can make it long, make it a really long hat that's slouchy, or you can make it a shorter beanie, or any kind of hat you want. I have a smaller head, so I'm only going to go about 6.5 inches long, maybe 7. Oh, I might go a little longer. It depends. I'll see. Depends how it looks with its look too. And anyway, when you get the lengths you want, and you can look at a chart if you're not sure of the length. You know, you can look at a chart for lengths for hats, and then you just measure. If the chart wants you to measure from the brim, you measure from the brim up to the end, right when you're done binding off or about to bind off. If you just want to measure for the hat, not the brim, then you measure from there up. Pretty easy. So you can make it any lengths you want. So we will catch up when we're getting close to binding off and have a look at where we are. So I will see you in a bit. Okay, I've got it as long as I want it to be now. And here's where I can see the dark that I added in. And I'm wondering if I can get it to the point where you can see how the pattern looks on the dark. Probably not. It's just too dark, but it doesn't show up as much, but it blends in really nice, and it's very, very textured. And so here's what it's looking like. And I measured it, and I'm at 7 inches, so it's going to be a little bit slouchy on me with my little head, but I like it like that too. And I did want to have about the same amount of dark on the top. So I'm ready to bind off, and it's going to look good on both sides when I bind off. So I'm going to have a reversible one that will reverse with my cowl. Now I've got a really nice video where I did the bind off already, so I'm going to take you to that, and then we can just look at this when it's done. So we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to do a reduced brim on the hat. And so the first thing we do, and I've already done this, of course, is done the 1 row of E-wrap. So you can do this not just with this hat, but with any hat that you have that you want to do a reduced brim, so that it's not bulky, so it lays flatter, and it works especially nice on slouch hats. So whenever you do that, always do a row of E-wrap just before you start, no matter what stitch you are doing. And the reason for that is E-wrap is nice and loose, so it makes it easier to move stitches over. Okay, so that's the reason for that. So you do the row of E-wrap, and then we're going to start moving stitches to reduce. And it's a very easy reduction to get a flatter brim. We're going to count every 4 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the 4th peg, we're just going to take it off the loom and then move it over to the peg before. So now you have 2 stitches on the loom. And number 4 is blank. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 again. You take the loom off, or the stitch off, and put it on the peg before. So now if we go from the beginning, we got 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg, 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg. And you're going to do that all the way around the loom. Every 4th, you're going to be moving over to the 3rd. When you get to the end, if it's not equally divisible, you'll have some extra loops with thread on, yarn on, that you can't move over, and that's okay. Leave them on. It's better to leave them on than to reduce too much. So I'll meet you back when we get all the way and that we reduced by moving every 4th peg onto the 3rd. So we'll see you in a few. Okay, so I've gone all the way around now, and I've moved them all over, and mine did turn out fairly even. I have just 3 here instead of 2. So that's all because it's not evenly divisible. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do another round of E-wrap, and how you do that is you E-wrap all the pegs that have yarn on them, knit them over, and with this one we take both loops over, then go behind any empty pegs and E-wrap the pegs that have yarn on them, taking the 2 off, skipping by going behind the empty peg and then just E-wrapping. Okay, so you just do that all the way around the loom, and I will see you back at the beginning. Okay, so I've E-wrapped around the loom, and now we're going to do our next reduction. So we have the 3 pieces of yarn that are on the 3 pegs, and then on either side pegs with no yarn. So we're always going to be working with the ones that have yarn on them, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and you're going to take the yarn from number 2 now and move it over to number 1. And then on the next 3 peg grouping, you're going to do the same thing. Now on the first one, I had 4 yarns. So here, I'm going to just ignore the extra yarn here. And on 2, I'm just going to move it over to 1, like that. Okay, so you just go all the way around, taking the yarn from number 2 and putting it on number 1. It's a little awkward for me. And I'll meet you up when we have that all done. Okay, now that you've done that, you have yarn on every second peg. So now we just E-wrap around, doing the same thing, going behind the pegs with no yarn and E-wrapping the pegs with yarn. Taking both loops over, going behind the ones with no yarn, and just E-wrapping. So I'll see you when you have that done. Okay, so you finished, and then all we're going to do now is take this yarn and put it around the loom, and then another half. We just want to make sure we have it long enough, and cut it, because we're all reduced, and now we're just going to take it off the loom. Whoops. That off there. So you just take a needle. You can use your loom hook also if you want. You don't have to have a needle. And I'm just going to thread the needle with the yarn. There, got it this time. There we go. And then all you're going to do is go around the loom and just scoop up that yarn and get it inside this. So we go up and we just scoop up that loop. Okay, so I will just meet you up when we've scooped up all the loops. Okay, and then just be sure you've picked up every single loop, and then go back into the first loop that you started with. Then you can just take your needle off. At this point, I'm just going to cut this a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with. And then take my loom hook, and I'm just going to start popping all these off the loom. You can even do it with your fingers. There, and it's off the loom. And then at this point, all we're going to be doing is drawing in the hat. So just draw it in a little ways, and then you're going to take the yarn and put it to the inside of the hat, although the inside of this hat looks really good too, just as good as the outside. Okay, and then you're just going to pull it closed until you get it all the way closed. Nice and tight. Now what I do is I hold it tight, and I usually go in and check and make sure that I've drawn it up evenly, and you can see that. So just a nice flattened brim. But now we can put the needle back on, cut this shorter again. Just save enough to sew it up and weave it in. And thread your needle. Okay, now I want to make sure that this is nice and tight so that we don't end up with a hole anywhere. And then I'm just going to put this through a couple of the yarns and make a knot. And I got that tail stuck in there. There we go. Just make a nice tight knot to hold it closed. And then you can see where the center was right there. And then I'm just going to sew around it. Now, if you were sure this was always going to be the inside of the hat, you could even just sew it across. But I'm going to sew around to keep it neat, for the reason that I might be using this side too. This hat is very nicely reversible, but it gives you that option. And I'm just going to sew around. And every once in a while, I'm just going to put a little knot on it. There, get that working iron out of there and sewing around here. And then I'm just going to do another knot. I just wouldn't want it to ever come undone. And when you're sure you have the hat all very securely sewn, you just do another little knot and you are done. There we go. And then you can weave in the end of the yarn. I'm not going to bother doing that now, just to keep it there. Turn the hat to the other side, and there you go. You have a nice flat brim. See? Just flattens it out. It has a really nice little shape to it. If you laid it down like this, you can just see how nice and flat it is. Just an easy way to reduce your brim. And it's really great on slouchy hats. Okay, so here's the hat all bound off. And I really like the way it turned out. And there you can see the pattern more on here. And because I did the reduced bind off, of course it's flatter on top. So there it is. And it looks really good on this side too. You just have to be careful how you sew it on the top when you bind it off if you want it to be reversible, because you want this side to be good too. And it is. It's nice and flat. And there's your pattern on this side. There, now you can see the pattern more on this side. This is really beautiful too, both sides. Both sides are just so nice. And that's all there is to it. It's really not that hard. It's a few steps, but beautiful, beautiful hat that you can wear and be proud of with a beautiful stitch on it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, bye.